When was the last time you RSVP'd to something on paper? When was the last time you had to cut along a dotted line and tick a box and give a piece of paper back to your friend? I grew up like this. This was normal in my childhood. You'd be playing in the playground and someone would skip up to you, give you a piece of paper that had their name, address, and date of the party on it. And down at the bottom, you ticked a box, yes or no. Yes meant yes, and no meant sorry, I can't make it. But now Facebook has come along and changed our options. So we have going and not going, but now we have interested. And having this third category has really changed the way we RSVP to things. Because we've got going, yes, and not going, no. But we tend to sit in the land of interested, which kind of means, hey, I think it's swell that you invited me to this, but I really don't want to commit one way or the other. I want to see if something better comes along or if I could be bothered showing up on the day. And I can see the benefit in keeping your options open. I do this myself. But when it's your event, when people aren't willing to say, yes, I'd love to come and celebrate this with you, it kind of hurts. It kind of hurts having people hold back from committing to something that you would like to do with them. And of course, we all know that Facebook is depressing all of us now because we see all of the things that we're not invited to. We see people going out to birthday parties and Christmas parties and weekends away with their friends. And it stings a bit, doesn't it, to see that, to feel like that we are on the outer, that we're not included. We can feel lonely. And right now, one of the things that is being recognized in our society is that people are feeling lonely. Social media, even though it connects us, it really hasn't made us feel like we belong. And so it's really important that we tell the Christmas story, because the Christmas story speaks to those deepest needs that we have, to feel like we belong, to be welcomed and loved. Now, you may know some of the Christmas story. You may know the really cool bits, the angels that terrify everyone, the shepherds coming in and seeing the baby Jesus, maybe the wise men who show up with these incredible gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But maybe what you're not so aware of is the reason Jesus is born into a manger. You see, what's happening at the time of Jesus' birth is that the Romans are conducting a census. Jesus' mother, Mary, has married Joseph, and they are Jewish people. But the Romans have conquered much of the world around them. And the Bible has the story of Jesus' birth. It's written down in the book of Luke. And Luke writes that Caesar Augustus wants to count how many people he's ruling over. He wants to run a census. And this really messes with the lives of the ordinary people because they have to leave where they are and travel somewhere else to be counted. And this is particularly hard for Mary, who's heavily pregnant. But Mary and Joseph go on this 4-day journey to Bethlehem. But when they get there, they find that the village is full of other people who've had to go there to be counted. And there's no room for them. So even though Mary is in labor, she's forced to give birth where the animals are kept and to place her precious baby boy into a food box that animals eat out of, a manger. And this is how Jesus enters the world. The very first thing that Jesus knows about the world is that no one made room for them. You know, Jesus could have entered the world at any time in history. God could have chosen any time for his son to be born. But God chooses this exact moment when the Romans are upending the whole world just to count and show how powerful they are. Because God isn't the kind of God that is just sitting back looking down on the world and thinking, I guess they're doing okay. God is deeply interested in what is happening in the world. in the way that we treat each other, in our relationship with God. And he can see that all of those things have become dysfunctional and disconnected, that people don't make room for a pregnant woman who is due to give birth. So God has decided to do something about it. And so he sends his son Jesus to be born into this mess, not to avoid it, but to come right into it, to live it, to experience it, to be human, which means to hurt. But unlike every other person that's been born, Jesus has the power to tell a different story. Jesus has the power to live a different way. Because when Jesus grows up, he does things differently. He includes the outsider. Jesus will go and touch people that nobody else was willing to touch. Jesus will go to parties with other people that were looked down on. Jesus will include different people around him that others wouldn't have included. Because Jesus has come to include and welcome everybody, to make room for everybody. But this didn't make Jesus popular. The religious leaders at the time didn't like what Jesus was offering people. They didn't like what Jesus was inviting people into. Because they were there at the pleasure of the Romans, and as long as things were peaceful, they were able to maintain their positions of power. And they wanted to choose the temporary comfort that the Romans were offering them over what Jesus was offering them. And so they eventually collude with the Roman government to once again interfere in Jesus' life. And Jesus is handed over to them and crucified as a criminal, despite doing nothing except loving God and sharing God's message with the people. But just like the birth of Jesus in that wooden box, the death of Jesus on the wooden cross is exactly part of God's plan. Because Jesus hadn't just come to sort of overthrow the Roman government. He'd come to start an entirely new way of doing things. And this includes even beating death. And so 3 days after Jesus is killed professionally and publicly by the Romans, Jesus raises from the dead and shows himself to people. And at first his disciples are a little bit confused about what is going on. They had been hoping for some relief from the Romans. But then they can see that Jesus hasn't come to just play the Romans game, to beat them at their own game. But Jesus has come to change the game, to start an entirely new way of thinking about the way we relate to each other and the way we relate to God. And so they place their trust in him, Jesus, who has risen from the dead and shown that he has all power and authority, but he calls us into loving God and loving neighbor. And this invitation is still open to you today. And if you think about it, I guess you have 3 options: going, not going, and interested. You can say not going. You can say no thanks to Jesus. Because Jesus isn't like the Romans. Jesus isn't going to force you to be counted as one of his. He wants you to come into this by your own choice. And so he's willing to risk that you will reject him, that you will overlook him, that you will not make room for him. But before you do that, please look again at that manger and at the cross and understand what Jesus has done for you, the way he has come to give us life and show us a new way of loving. And maybe you're interested. Maybe there are some things about the story of Jesus that you find compelling. But maybe you're still skeptical. Maybe there are questions that you would like answers to. Well, I would encourage you to ask your Christian friend those questions, or to connect with a local church and let them know that you're a skeptic, that you have some questions. We welcome questions. Find a way, find someone who can answer those. I am happy to talk to you if you want to reach out to me as well. There was a time in my life when I was just kind of interested in religion. I knew God was there. I guess I thought Jesus was okay. I just didn't care. It really didn't have any impact on my life. But one day, a Christian friend invited me to come along to church, and I began to hear more about Jesus. And when I experienced his love and inclusion in my life, it changed everything for me. It was the best thing I've ever done. And maybe you're ready to do that. Maybe you are ready to say, yes, Jesus, I would love to be included in your family. I would love to be part of what you are doing in this world. If that's you, you can do that right now. You can pray to God and let him know that you believe that he sent his son Jesus to live as one of us, to die on the cross and to raise again from the dead and rule over everything. And then find some Christians you can partner with. Find a local church or an expression of God's family that you can join and learn what it means to follow Jesus in the way that we live and spread God's love and message through the world. I think you will find that at this Christmas time, there is no better invitation for you than the invitation to be included and welcomed in God's family. And I really hope you'll accept it.